What's going on YouTube? It's Teej, back again with another video, and today I'm giving out my rankings for the best offenses all the way down to the weakest offenses in the NFL. Decided to bring this video your way. Today, again, we're talking offense, and then later on this week, we'll talk defense, but of course, let me hear your thoughts down below. What's the best offense in the league, and tell me why? Who's got the worst offense in the league, and tell me why? And of course, who's your favorite squad, and what tier ranking would you put them in? What group do you think they best fall into? And let me hear your argument why they belong there. So, let's have a fun conversation down below. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. The like button if you do. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. And definitely check out our sponsor today, BetUS. All those links are down below in the description. All right, let's waste no time and jump right into it. The first team we're going to talk about is the Cincinnati Bengals. And this will not take much deliberation whatsoever. Potentially one of the best offenses in the league. I mean, this is very simple. And for each and every one of these teams, I'll spend more time on some and I'll spend less time on others because, like, hey, when you have Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, yeah, you're going to be one of the best offenses in the league. It's just that simple. Done a lot to improve that offensive line, including Orlando Brown Jr. Zach Taylor's done a good job calling the plays. They got a good run game to go off of it. Yeah, this is just simply put one of the best offenses in the league. Then we get to the Tennessee Titans, and this is definitely a tougher team to put into the ranking here. And actually, they're going to be our first below-average unit here. And a big reason for that is the wide receiver room. I mean, I like Chigga at tight end. Treylon Burks going into year two, he actually looked better than I was kind of anticipating. I was a little bit lower on him in the 2022 NFL draft. But, Ryan Tannehill's serviceable. Derrick Henry getting up there in age, but still a good player. They've had to retool the offensive line. What's that going to look like? That's a tough question to have an answer for at this time of the year. And then outside of Treylon Burks, who you're hoping takes that step forward in year two, but no guarantee. And it's Kyle Phillips, who's intriguing out of the slot. And it's Nick Westbrook-Akina, who, plays football, and, that's about the nicest thing I can say. I mean, he's just not anybody that you're writing home about as your wide receiver too, especially. So, yeah, got to go below average, which I also want to note, like, these tiers, I think, clearly indicate even the weakest offense in the NFL, I don't think there's really a bad one. I think the league has taken such strides forward, and, like, QB camps, kids start doing that freshman year of high school, right? Like, wide receivers are running 7-on-7 drills as soon as they step onto a high school field, shoot, maybe even by 8th grade. So, kids are playing earlier. They're getting better because of it. So even like the weakest NFL offenses, I still think I'd call them below average because I really don't know if there's like one offensive unit you're like, that one stinks. So also 5 tiers is just easier than 6. So that explains it a little bit. Anyways, let's talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is kind of a team, with a tale of two halves from last year. First half, which is still a little bit rocky, and then you get to the midway point where Trevor Lawrence really figures it out. Right now, I'm going to go above average because I do think it's an above average unit. Some reshuffling on the offensive line, especially a tackle, which concerns me because that is a catalyst for a potential, downturn in a big way. Or, Walker Little, Anton Harrison proved to be enough, and this team picks up right where they left off. We just don't know yet because I haven't gotten to see a whole lot of Walker Little, and we haven't seen a snap out of Anton Harrison. But, on paper, I'm not super concerned about it, but it could be the reason for their demise, maybe. Adding Calvin Ridley is awesome. Love that. And now you have Christian Kirk solidified as the slot guy. You got another guy who's not a clear-cut 1A, not a Jamar Chase type, but he can definitely be a 1B, and he's certainly the best wide receiver in that wide receiver room, at least in my opinion. Evan Ingram, hopefully they figure out that long-term extension. I feel like he's found a nice place there in Jacksonville. A couple of good running backs, ATN, Bigsby, and of course Trevor Lawrence is the engine that makes this car go. So I'll go above average, but this is easily a team that, as long as the tackle situation is solidified, they can move up another tier. Then we get to the Houston Texans. They're going to be another below-average team. And I mean, like them and then one other team we're going to talk about, which that other team is going to be towards the bottom of a lot of my rankings, which is unfortunate, but they are where they are supposed to be, given that they're in a rebuild. Houston's a little bit further along than the other team, but we'll talk about that when we get there. Look, you got C.J. Stroud. I like Dameon Pierce a ton. The offensive line is mostly in a good spot. I'm really glad they extended Shaq Mason. I think it's a good piece to keep around for the next 2 to 3 years, basically throughout the rookie contract of C.J. Stroud. And then you have, this wide receiver room that there's upside definitely there, but it's a lot of question marks as it stands right now. So can they get more out of Nico Collins? Can they get a lot out of John Mechie, right? Like, can Robert Woods turn back the clock? Like, there's a lot of question marks there, and there's a pathway where that wide receiver room is okay, but kind of like Tennessee, I look at those pass catchers and I'm like, I don't know if this moves the needle in the best direction forward for C.J. Stroud. I like the Dalton Schultz signing too, but again, how much is that really changing? And how much is that taking C.J. Stroud and putting him into a great spot where it's almost like where he was at Ohio State? He had all the weapons around him, and his job is quote-unquote easy. I just don't know if he has that type of situation. Offensive line's good. Run game's solid. Wide receivers worry me a little bit. All right, next up, is the Indianapolis Colts, so another AFC South team. I'm going to put them in above average, and this may be a little surprising. Now, granted, I'm also ranking these as we go along, so this is easily, and just for reference, this is going to be one of those teams towards the back half of the above average tier. But I think Anthony Richardson and his rushing ability makes him a solid starter right away. And, kind of like, the first year seeing Jalen Hurts as a full-time starter, or Justin Fields early on in his career, or Lamar Jackson's another good example. It's guys who can do a lot with their legs, raise the floor of that offense. So it's kind of hard to put him anything other than very mid, because I feel like Anthony Richardson should win that job, and his rushing ability is going to be there. And he is a good thrower of the football. You just need to get it more consistently. And then on top of that, Jonathan Taylor, I think the offensive line gets back on track. Michael Pittman Jr., Alec Pierce, Josh Downs in the third to compete with Isaiah McKenzie for that slot wide receiver role, and Shane Steichen coming over as the OC in this ranking as well as the defensive ranking. I'm weighing in the coordinators, those play callers. That is a part of the equation in my books. So I think everything around Richardson is actually a really good environment, and because he is one of those guys that I think comes with a decently high floor and can play right away, you got to put him in this kind of above average. Maybe they're very mid. He's kind of teetering on the edge of those two. And also, if it's Gardner Minshew, we've seen him be a competent starter in far worse situations. So even if it's Minshew, I still think above average isn't too far out of the realm of possibilities. And again, this is going to be a team that's towards the back half of this category. Then we get to Green Bay. I'm actually going to put Green Bay just one spot ahead of Indianapolis. I think the Packers offense is going to be better than what a lot of people are anticipating. And part of that's Jordan Love. Now, again, the context of his last two appearances, a start against Kansas City and a point in a season 2 years ago where it was Kansas City's defense that was winning up games, not their offense, because they hit this too high shell wall, and they were kind of figuring out how to adapt to that. So the defense picked up the load. And that was a game where the Chiefs defense played great against the Packers. And then last year, Jordan Love comes in the fourth quarter, playing against Philadelphia. Good defense, but Philly's up by double digits. They're kind of playing prevent, Christian Watson, catch and run, and he takes to the house. I don't know if that was really an appearance that says, wow, Jordan Love is the next Aaron Rodgers. But that being said, he was somebody I liked coming out of college. I think the tools and the traits are there. 3 years of sitting. He should be solid. And he has gotten better each and every time we've gotten to see him. Christian Watson year 2, Romeo Doubs year 2. You add another wide receiver in this year's class with Jaden Reed in the second round. Add a couple tight ends. Really good run game. Offensive line that even without David Bakhtiari is at least average. They've done a great job finding other options. Zach Tom, Josh Yman filling in for the injured Bakhtiari. I think this is at least an average offense. And if you look at, who they have, very mid, I don't know. Especially that run game, I think that pushes them up another tier, puts them in the above average category. I'm excited to see Love, but he is really the determining factor of whether they're right on here, maybe should be higher, or maybe a tier below. Then we get to the Minnesota Vikings. I'm gonna go with our first gonna be a really good offense. You add Jordan Addison, and you draft him to take the pressure off the shoulders of Justin Jefferson. I think Addison is a ready to go day one type of starting player in this year's draft. Really savvy route runner, which fits well with Kevin O'Connell and the success that Sean McVay has had. Kevin O'Connell, obviously a disciple of that offensive scheme, so I think it's a good fit, and it's kind of what they were missing with Adam Thielen kind of hitting his washed-up phase in his career. I still think whether Dalvin Cook is not there or not, that run scheme will create openings, and whether it's Dalvin, Madison, Dwayne McBride, Ty Chandler, whoever, I think they'll have an efficient enough offensive, run game. The offensive line's taking strides in the right direction, and then Kirk Cousins is solid. I think this is going to be a really good offense, and a lot of this is to Kevin O'Connell. He is one of the best offensive lines. It's the reason that OC with the Rams, they win a Super Bowl, and then he goes out and gets a head coaching job. Kind of backs it up last year with the Vikings team, and honestly, this offense might have only gotten better, maybe a little bit older in some spots, but they might have also only gotten better with the addition of Jordan Addison. That's kind of a tongue twister. So I'll put him in the really good offensive tier. Then we get to the Bears. I'll go above average, and this may surprise a few people. I'm even going to put them above the Packers here. Not by much, but just ahead of the Packers because, Justin Fields, showcased what he could do with his legs last year. So that's not a question mark. But, the issue spots around him were the offensive line and the pass catchers. Well, now he's got a clear-cut number one wide receiver, DJ Moore, who's going to make it that much easier for Darnell Mooney, that much easier for Chase Claypool, that much easier for Velus Jones, that much easier for, the tight ends, and the offensive line. And with the addition of Darnell Wright, I'm like Braxton Jones year 2, Darnell Wright to plug and play starter at right tackle. You sign Nate Davis, you shuffle Cody Whitehair inside to play center, and then Tevin Jenkins is going to play guard full time. I don't look at that offensive line and see any glaring weak spots. There may be some areas where they can improve down the line, but I don't see any absolute glaring weaknesses. This is your clear-cut weakest link. So they have a number one wide receiver, so the rest of the wide receiver room assignments, so to speak, get easier. The offensive line's now not a glaring weak spot. This is Justin Fields. He's going to determine whether this tier is right, wrong. Do I have him too high? Do I have him too low? Am I just right? But I'm a Justin Fields believer. I liked him a ton coming out of Georgia, number 3 player on my big board back in 2021. And we've already seen what he could do with his legs. And he felt like Darren Williams when he was on the Nets, or Joe Johnson, those Nets teams that were really bad, and those guys were scoring 30 and 40 a night just to keep them in like respectable loss territory, losing by single digits, as opposed to like getting drummed by 20, 25. And I kind of felt like Justin Fields last year. Well, now he's got that supporting cast around him. I'm projecting a big step forward this year for Chicago. Also, year 2 of Luke Getsy, which I really don't know if you can put enough emphasis on getting past that first year when you're a first-time play caller. All right, then we get to the Lions, and I'm actually going to put the Lions in the potentially best offense in the league tier. And I mean, this was one of the best offenses in the NFL last season, so why would I anticipate a drop-off this year, right? Especially when you consider year 2 of Jameson Williams, year 2 of Ben Johnson as the OC. You change up the running back room, but, adding a Jahmyr Gibbs, that sounds like an upgrade over DeAndre Swift to me, and I think, David Montgomery can be that Jamal Williams type. Offensive line should be that much better, maybe even healthier with Big V coming back, right? Another year in the system for Jared Goff, and you bring back Marvin Jones. Like, there's a lot to like there, and this was already one of the best offenses in the league. So the fact that they're getting better, yeah, you got to put them in this top tier, potentially best offense in the league category. Next is the Washington Commanders. They're going to be our first team in the very mid category, and really this comes down to Sam Howell, because I actually like their wide receivers a lot. Terry McLaurin, one of the best wide receivers in the league, in my opinion. I think John Dotson was better than I thought he'd be as a rookie. Curtis Samuel's fine as a gadget third weapon. Still have some okay tight end options. I really think Cole Turner might take a big step forward this year. Brian Robinson in year 2. Still got Antonio Gibson. The offensive line on paper looks pretty good. If Sam Howell plays better than what he did in that last game last year, which still wasn't terrible, but if he takes a step forward in year 2, I mean, this could be a team that's around that average mark, maybe even above average territory. Or he plays like a 5th-round, second-year player, and they're kind of treading water, and it's kind of the Washington team we've seen the last couple of years with, post-major surgery Alex Smith and Taylor Heineke and things like that. So this is either going to be more of the same, or it's going to get a little bit better. And right now I'm thinking it's going to be kind of more of the same, despite how much I do like Sam Howell. But also a big factor here is Eric Bieniemy. Can he get that little bit more out of this offense? We'll have to wait and see. But right now, I'm going to put him towards the top of the very mid-tier, but kind of like Indianapolis, kind of teetering between 2 tiers right now. Then we get to Philadelphia, and I'm going to put them just ahead of Detroit. This one pains me, and these rankings really could go back and forth. That's why I think the tier system is the best way to do it, because I'm seeing Philadelphia and Detroit are around the same area, and if you're going to fight me over one spot, one placement over another, I understand. You're a fan. I get it. But really, just focus on the tiers here, because that's really the image I'm trying to paint. But yeah, Philadelphia, I mean, they're so deep. We saw it last year. They can win in so many ways. They can win with Jalen Hurts getting 15 carries, leaning heavily into the run game, and, letting their defense kind of carry the load as well, and winning a 17-13 sweat, against Indianapolis, or whatever the final score was there. But it was kind of one of those weird games where the offense wasn't all that great. Or we can see games where Jalen Hurts has 300 yards by halftime and already 4 touchdowns, 2 for each one of the big guys, A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. This team can win in so many different ways. I think Nick Sirianni's still in place. The offense is going to look very similar despite, a change in the OC position. But ultimately, because the offense, I think, stays very similar in regards to its structure, I think this team's going to be picking up right where they left off last year. A little bit of turnover in the backfield, but not enough to dissuade me and take them out of this top tier. I think this is one of the best offenses in the league. Next up, Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm going to actually have them at the very top of the very mid-tier. Kenny Pickett was my QB4 in 2022 quarterback rankings. I was not, sold on him. I wasn't excited about when the Steelers drafted him in the first round. But nonetheless, he showed me more than I was anticipating. And also, Pickett to Pickens. That's the combination to get excited about if you're a Steelers fan for years to come. Pickens should be the number 1 moving forward. Deontay Johnson becomes a really nice 2. You bring in Allen Robinson, who feels like he can play that Chase Claypool role just in a way more efficient way, because Claypool started his career as this guy who was turning 50-50 balls into 80-20 balls. Then all of a sudden they reverted to 20-80 balls, and he wasn't winning those, contested catch spots. That's all Allen Robinson does. Not I don't want to say all, but that is his calling card. That is where he is at his best, and that's where he's made a lot of highlights. So he could just be the upgraded version of Chase Claypool. So this offense might get better. Plus, you're bringing Isaac Seumalo. Some of the young guys get another year of experience. Najee Harris, another year with Jalen Warren in the backfield too. So there's a lot of things moving in the right direction. But this comes down to Matt Canada. Can Matt Canada get this offense, kind of out of this, we're going to score 18 to 21 points per week rut that they've been in the last 2 years, and really take this team back to where they were with the Killer Bees and scoring 25 to 30 a game? If Matt Canada just isn't that type of play caller, then this is going to be a mediocre, middle-of-the-road type of offense. If he grows as a play caller, this offense has a chance to be moving up a tier, maybe even 2, just maybe, if I'm lucky. It's a Steelers fan. But right now, I got to put him in that very mid-tier. Like the pieces, but Matt Canada, this is a big year for him. Dallas Cowboys. I'm going to put them in the going to be really good tier, and I feel like I get a lot of pushback on my Dallas, appreciation. I feel like I like this roster more than most. Now, granted, I'm not a Cowboys fan, and if you're not a Cowboys fan, you're supposed to hate them. I admire a lot of the work that they've done to build a pretty solid roster. The reason I think this is going to be a really good offense is, last year they were just missing that other piece besides CeeDee Lamb on the outside. Jalen Tolbert wasn't ready as a rookie. Michael Gallup misses a lot of time, comes back from the injury, not the same guy that we were expecting. Well, Brandon Cooks, no matter who he's playing with and what team it is, the guy puts up close to 1,000 yards a year, can find the end zone 5 to 8 times. Like, he is just consistent, reliable, steady. He's done it with Goff. He's done it with the Patriots. He's done it with Drew Brees and the Saints, and he's done it with Davis Mills, Jeff Driscoll, and the Houston Texans, right? Like, he is just one of those players that produces wherever he goes. He's almost like Joe Johnson. And maybe he's the comp there as opposed to what I used earlier. But nevertheless, I think this is an offense that, with Brandon Cook coming in, Dak Prescott has a lot of wide receiver talent around him. They lose Dalton Schultz, but I still think they have some okay tight end play. The offensive line is going to be solid as long as everyone stays healthy. Big if there, but on paper, really good offensive line. And even without Zeke Elliott, I don't think you're losing much. As long as Pollard gets back to 100%, I think that running back committee is going to be in a good position. So I think this is going to be a really solid offense. Now, granted, they're going to be the last of the 4 teams that are going to go here in the going to be really good tier. Then we get to the Giants. I'm going to put the Giants just behind the Commanders, and I can already hear the keyboards clacking away about why I'm crazy for doing that. Again, Giants fans, don't worry about who's necessarily one spot ahead, one spot behind. Just focus on the tier. Now, granted, you maybe have a problem with me putting them in the very mid-tier, and they should be in the above average. I get that. I really do. I am where I feel like I'm maybe a little bit higher than non-Cowboys fans on Dallas. I feel like I'm a little bit lower on the Giants than non-Giants fans elsewhere. So I understand. I just don't think Daniel Jones is all that great. Yes, he's coming off a career year, but quarterback play can vary, and he could be essentially the same, like taking their PFF, quarterback grade and passing grade. He could essentially have the same year, and the production could look drastically different. That's part of why I kind of admire what they do. But that being said, Saquon Barkley, hopefully he's that much better. Really, the key cog in the mix here is Evan Neal. If he has that year 2 leap that Andrew Thomas took, that's a really legit offensive line. That actually could make Barkley that much better. It can make Daniel Jones that much scarier. Also, I want to see how much more they tap into his rushing ability. Last year, they definitely leaned more into his rushing ability than what Coach Judge did during his tenure as the head coach. So if they build upon that, then okay, this offense maybe could be moved up another tier. And kind of like some of the guys and teams below the Giants, Tennessee and the Houstons of the world, the wide receiver room just kind of scares me. Wando Robinson could be a good slot. Love the value of Jalen Hyatt, but they got, Paris Campbell, Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard. They already have these smaller, slightly built guys. Hyatt might be the best of them, but I feel like there's still more that needs to be there in that wide receiver room. And even if Hyatt is better than those other guys, is he a wide receiver 1? I would venture to say he's not. Now, I could be wrong on that, but I would say he's not. So do bring in Darren Waller, and maybe you're looking at the Chiefs model, right, where the tight end's kind of that number 1 target getter. Fair if that's the case, but Waller also comes with a lot of question marks in regards to how much he's going to play. So a lot to kind of balance out here, because I could see where the Giants deserve to be in a tier higher. I'm just not crazy about Daniel Jones. Need to see it from Evan Neal. Need to see Waller healthy, and got to figure out that wide receiver room. And to me, that's too many asterisks to be leaning on for me to move them into that above average tier. Next, Carolina. I'm going to put them actually in the same tier, but even behind the Giants. A lot of the same concerns. What's that wide receiver room? Like Terrence Marshall, thought they got good value with him in the second round. Love Laviska Shenault, but he's bouncing around the league for good reasons. Again, like I said earlier, I think Adam Thielen is in the washed up point of his career. I don't hate the backfield by any stretch. I think the offensive line is actually one of the parts of this roster I really like, which is funny to see because 2 years ago it was one of the parts of the roster I couldn't stand. And then Bryce Young. I mean, if he's the guy who, I pegged as my number 1 player on my big board, I thought he should be the number 1 pick. If he lives up to that status, this offense is going to get pretty good, and they're going to get a lot better pretty quick. But I can also see where there's some growing pains. He's a smaller guy. I can see the first 4 to 6 weeks being a little bit of a bump in the road for Bryce Young, who hopefully is the starter week 1, just because let the guy play. That's the only way he's going to get used to the NFL, speed of play and that level of competition generally. But yeah, I think there's a solid foundation there. But outside of Bryce Young, I don't know if there's anything great yet. Now, once they, if they get that Jamar Chase equivalent, I could easily see where this team takes that Cincinnati Bengals step forward. It's like they got the quarterback, they're just missing that one other great piece. And then once they get it, that's when this team becomes really scary. I just don't know if they're here just yet. Tampa Bay, man, this is the one where I feel like I might regret it. I'm going to put them in the below average tier. Look, I love the wide receivers. Mike Evans, great, but he misses a lot of time. Chris Godwin, great, misses a lot of time. Russell Gage, pretty good player, misses a lot of time. Tight ends are fine, whatever. K. Don I actually think could be pretty good this year. Running backs, Rachaad White is good enough. Offensive line, a little bit of a reshuffle there, but ultimately, you add Cody Mock, Luke Gedeke, I think could be fine at right tackle. Tristan Wirfs, I think is going to be a really, really good left tackle. But it's, kind of one superstar, Ryan Jensen there at center, who, maybe is another superstar. But everything else is kind of, iffy right now is, I think, the best way to put it. And then you get to the quarterback situation. Can Baker play like he did towards the end of his rookie year and then in year 2? Or is it going to be latter half of his career in Cleveland with, what we saw in Carolina? I just don't know at this point. And Baker Mayfield feels like the ultimate role that I kind of quarterback. Maybe he'll be the guy and maybe he won't. I still think there's a lot of talent in there. This guy's been a victim of so many bad circumstances. Can he grow beyond that? Can he have that Geno Smith type of career resurgence where it's like, hey, I'm not in a shitty situation, so why am I playing shitty? And he kind of figures it out. Maybe this is the spot. This is as good a spot I think he's going to find at this point in his career moving forward if he doesn't figure it out. But I can't guarantee that he is. So question mark with Baker Mayfield, that's the biggest position you got to have a question mark at. And Kyle Trask we haven't gotten to see yet, so I'll focus on Baker more than Trask. But like a lot of the situation, offensive line a little iffy, and then Baker Mayfield, the ultimate question mark. So I got to go below average, but again, like I said earlier, below average, I think that's just kind of where the league is at, where there's not really a dog water offense where it's like this team's going to be lucky to score 12 a game. I just think there's, a couple teams that are lagging behind, have a little bit less firepower than some other teams across the league. Then we get to the Saints. They're actually the top above average unit here for my offensive rankings. Derek Carr's a really good player. He's solid. He's like perennial QB 13 to 15 for me. He's always just in that middle of the road, above average, top half of the league type of quarterback. And, last year was just weird. That was definitely a strange blip on the radar of his career where it feels like an outlier compared to what else he's done. I also think it may not be Sean Payton, but Carmichael there is the OC. It's going to be a lot of the same concepts. He'll be playing in a dome. I don't think it'll be, and also back to his time in Vegas, I think that change from Gruden to McDaniels hit a little bit harder than maybe we were anticipating. I think going to Pete Carmichael as the OC, I think he could get back on track and get back to kind of where he was with Gruden, hopefully at least. Kamara, we'll see about that suspension, but even behind him, Jamal Williams on an absolute bargain. Add another running back in the draft and Kendrick Miller. Offensive line should be really good as long as everyone stays healthy. Wide receiver room, if Thomas stays healthy, him, Olave, Rashid Shaheed, I'm excited to see that trio. And then you also have Johnson, who's scored like 7 touchdowns in the last half of last year, if not 6 of his 7 touchdowns for the back half of last year. So an emerging tight end presence as well. Yeah, I think this is a pretty good offense. Now, leaning on a big asterisk of health, but we're kind of doing that with every one of these teams. So if all stays healthy, that trio, Carr coming in, a lot of depth in the running back room, a solid offensive line, I think this should be an above average offense. Cardinals, sorry, this is going to be the below average tier. Now, this is tricky because how many games is Kyler Murray going to play next year? If I'm the Cardinals, I would make the argument that none is the right answer just because, hey, let's just go ahead and tank and position ourselves the best we can in the 2024 draft. If we get the number 1 pick like Kyler, well, we just saw the Bears trade the number 1 pick for a number 1 wide receiver and a bunch of draft assets. I think that sounds pretty good to me if I'm an Arizona fan. So I think this is a team that should embrace being a bad offense, right? They've already released DeAndre Hopkins, right? The offensive line is still kind of a little bit of a mess. The tackle situation, but the interior is still not necessarily great. The running backs are, fine enough. And then, Kyler, obviously a question mark how many games he plays. So I'm going to put him in the below average tier. If Kyler ends up, let's just say there's a world where he plays all 17 games, well, then, I'd maybe change it a little bit and go into the very mid tier towards the bottom of it or top of below average. But even with Kyler Murray playing, there's not a whole lot of help around him. Hollywood Brown's solid, but even outside of that, Rondale Moore's a nice gadget player. What else is really there? Trey McBride? All right, fine. That's a tight end. Again, I don't think this is an offense that's all that crazy good, but I think they're kind of embracing that at this point of the rebuild. Then we get to Seattle, and I'm going to put Seattle in the above average tier, and I'm going to put them just behind Jacksonville. I was deliberating if I want to put them above or behind Jags, but again, don't worry about the exact placement. But above average offense, right? Resurgent Geno Smith, like the running backs. The offensive line, I think now that you got Olu Oluwatimi there at center, feels like you kind of rounded out that unit. You filled in that last glaring weakness. Noah Fant is a solid enough tight end, good athlete. And then DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith-Njigba with Tyler Lockett. That wide receiver trio with Geno Smith at this point in his career is why they go in this above average tier. Now, I'm also interested to see how much of this run game, maybe they do take a step forward and maybe should be moved up another tier. And if, K-Walk and Charbonnet are healthy and the offensive line is kind of picking up where they were maybe towards, especially the tackles, beginning of last year, and that kind of, we get that all of next year, all right, yeah, you could sell me on this team needing to be up another spot, but we saw that early success start to pewter out towards the end of the season, then they got back on track before hitting the playoffs. But, what Seattle team we're going to see? Is Geno Smith going to make it 2 years in a row? That's kind of my variable. That's kind of my question mark right now. They maybe could be moved up another tier, but I feel comfortable right now calling them an above-average offense. All right, next up, San Francisco. Yeah, I'm going to put them in potentially one of the best offenses in the NFL because it's Kyle Shanahan. There's so much rhetoric right now about, man, Sam Darnold, in the Shanahan offense, he could have this unbelievable, crazy year, and maybe we're talking about him as the starter by the end of the year. And I plan on doing, a little bit of a short or a TikTok on, backup quarterbacks who could end the year as a starter. And Sam Darnold's not insane because it's Kyle Shanahan. Look what he did with Mr. Irrelevant as a rookie. This guy does nothing but make quarterbacks look awesome. He did it in Washington, did it in Atlanta, doing it now in San Francisco. The guy's a wizard. And then outside of quarterback, one of the best running backs in football, and also Elijah Mitchell backing him up. An offensive line that, I'm a little concerned about the interior. Right tackle, big question mark right now, but Shanahan finds a way to get the best out of whoever is across the offensive line. Whether they're a great unit, then they're that much better, or they're a subpar unit and he gets them to average. I feel like he's going to work his magic again this year. And then wide receiver-wise, Debo, Brandon Ayuk, plus George Kittle at tight end. There's a lot of weapons to work with. So the scheme, the skill position players, and then whoever's at quarterback is going to put up some decent numbers and have some solid production. San Francisco, absolutely one of the best offenses in the NFL. All right, then we get to Cleveland. I'm going to put the Browns just behind Chicago, and I might regret this. Just like a lot of these other teams, that the linchpin is the quarterback position. What does Deshaun Watson look like this year? If it's 2020 Deshaun Watson, this team's going to need to be a lot higher, postseason rankings version. If he's like he was last year, all right, then this is maybe kind of the ceiling. Like the run game, like the offensive line, and then Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Cedric Tillman, and Elijah Moore. All right, those are 4 wide receivers I think makes a really solid wide receiver room, and a couple of good tight ends too. David Njoku really starting to pick it up in his career. This is Deshaun Watson. And like I said, if it's 2020 Deshaun Watson, they're going to be a really good offense. Maybe even potentially one of the best offenses in the league in that elite-ish territory. And also Kevin Stefanski is an offensive coordinator I really respect. Coach of the year 2 years ago for good reason. So this comes down to which version of Deshaun Watson we ultimately get. So they're a tough one to peg, so I kind of put them in the middle of the pack here. But ultimately, even like average Deshaun Watson, I think gives them an above-average offense. New England Patriots, they're going to go just ahead of the Carolina Panthers. I've said this plenty of times here on the channel, but there was no bigger improvement made from one offensive coordinator hire to another than going from Matt Patricia to Bill O'Brien. And that does a ton to raise the floor of this offense. And I think year 2 ultimately was a waste of Mac Jones' career because Matt Patricia, Joe Judge, that's the combination calling plays. Are you kidding me? We see this, defensive minds going to play, offensive coordinator, offensive minds going to play DC, and it's worked out. It just didn't come together with Matt Patricia. That's unfortunate. The other maybe concern here is wide receivers. Juju's good enough player. Tyquan Thornton year 2. Okay, Devontae Parker's a good contested catch guy. A couple okay tight ends, Hunter Henry, Mike Gesicki, depending on what you're looking for and what you're asking them to do. And they got a good run game. I like the committee. I think Ramondre Stevenson can be a good top of the committee type of back. I think the offensive line, especially with how much day 3 picks were used on the interior, actually has some solid depth, and it certainly helps having Michael Onwenu, who feels like he could play just about anywhere you ask him to. So, very mid, feels a little harsh, but I need to see someone step up in the wide receiver room, and I need to see what Mac Jones looks like. It even took Trevor Lawrence a little bit of time last year, right? Going from the Urban Meyer to Doug Peterson era, it wasn't a change that, boom, all of a sudden we saw the effects. No, it was midway point before Trevor Lawrence started to look like a guy who's the number 1 pick. So even with the change to Bill O'Brien, I could see where it takes 3, 4, 6, maybe even 8 weeks to the season before he starts really seeing the results and the progress for it. So I'm going to go very mid, but maybe you could convince me they should go in the above average tier. Miami Dolphins, I'm going to put them ahead of San Francisco. Now that might be a little crazy, but I like Tua more than I like Brock Purdy. I like Tua more than I like Sam Darnold. So yeah, I think I got to put him here. And I love me some Deebo Samuel. I love me some Brandon Ayuk. But I'm sorry, I'll take the combination of Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill over those guys any day of the week. There's no George Kittle in Miami, but nonetheless, I think they'll be able to work around that. You bring in Isaiah Wynn, figure on him playing left guard. That and right tackle are the 2 spots where it felt like they can get better. So I like the addition of Wynn. Feels like a good fit for that scheme. And also adding Devon Achane on top of Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson. More speed in the backfield. Are you kidding me? Like this team needed more speed. Mike McDaniel's one of the best offensive minds in the league. Yeah, if specifically Tua stays healthy, we saw this be one of the best offenses in the league. Now, the only other question I have is like, defense has started to drop linebackers 20 yards down the field because they know where the timing throws were going. 20 yards down the field over the middle to Waddle or Hill. What's the counter to that? How do you get that linebacker creeping up towards the box? Is it the run game? Because if so, I'm going to need to see that run game more consistently be awesome, like we saw in some games, but not others. Or I need to see, Devon Achane being used as an outlet in the passing game. Or I need to see more production at tight ends, picking up, working the underneath stuff. Or I need to see Jalen Waddle kind of revert back to what he was as a rookie, where he's doing a ton of RPO yak stuff. And I can see where that does bring linebackers close to the line of scrimmage, and ultimately you then gain that throwback. So I just need to see that counter to that one big part of the offense that defense has started to key in on down the stretch. Buffalo Bills, I'm going to put them just ahead of the Miami Dolphins. Josh Allen's a freak, but I can see where you're saying, hey, Miami's got 2 legit wide receiver ones, and Buffalo has 1 right now. Miami should be ranked higher. And honestly, I'm fine with that. And also, if you want to make the argument Mike McDaniel's a better play caller than Ken Dorsey, I'm not going to argue with that. And that's nothing against Ken Dorsey. Mike McDaniel's just awesome. Now, granted, he's only done it for 1 year. Same thing with Ken Dorsey, though. So small sample size for both of them. But Josh Allen, to me, top 3 quarterback in the league. Stephon Diggs, one of the best 5, maybe top 6 wide receivers in the NFL. I love me some Stephon Diggs. Dawson Knox plus Dalton Kincaid. I felt like they added another element. They had a run on wide receivers right before the Bills got to take Kincaid. He was the best receiving option on the board. So I know there's a lot of Bills fans who are saying, we already have Dawson Knox. Why did we take a tight end? Because he was the best pass catcher available at that point on the board. Jahmyr Gibbs was even gone, right? Like you couldn't even say he was the best receiver available. So you add Kincaid to another guy who could work the middle of the field, work underneath, also really good yards after the catch. I just need someone else to take some workload off the shoulder of Stephon Diggs. If they get that, this offense really does not have a weak link. Maybe right tackle with Spencer Brown. But even with adding, Osiris Torrance in the second round as a player I was really high on, thought he should have gone in the first round. I think this is a really, really good offense, and obviously it starts with Josh Allen. Chargers, they're going to be the top of the going to be really good tier. I mean, look, it's Justin Herbert, also Kellen Moore coming over as the OC. I'm a big Kellen Moore fan. Keenan Allen back for another year, Mike Williams. And then you add Quentin Johnston, who could be the yak guy they don't have, and the over-the-top speed element they don't have. Sign me up for that. And you got one more year of Austin Eckler as well. Offensive line getting Rashawn Slater back. They're only going to get better. Yeah, this one kind of paint the picture itself. The only reason they're not in potential one of the best offensive league is because I don't want to put too many teams in there. Also, this is a team that religiously fails to meet expectations, so I don't want to set the bar too high, knowing they're not going to hit it. I'll just kind of live in the realm where I feel like they're going to live, and that feels like they're going to be one of these really good offenses, maybe not elite. Kansas City Chiefs. Sorry, this is going to be the quickest team I talk about. If you're a Kansas City fan, you've heard it been said. It's Pat Mahomes. It's Travis Kelce. A deep stable of wide receivers. Really excited to see Sky Moore in year 2. Pacheco, other good running backs in the mix. An offensive line that's really, really solid, especially now you bring in Donovan Smith for a very affordable starting contract for a starting offensive tackle. Jawan Taylor's going to play right tackle. Much improved blocking there from a pass protection side. Yeah, it's one of the best. And it's Andy Reid, right? You lose Eric Bieniemy, but as much as I think Bieniemy deserves his credit, I mean, it's Andy Reid, right? So, yeah, Kansas City, best offense in the league, in my opinion. Then we get to the Vegas Raiders, and they're going to be the very bottom team in this above-average tier. Again, kind of teetering on the very mid to above average. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is solid. How many games is he going to miss this year? That's always going to be a huge question mark. Josh Jacobs coming off an awesome season. I think the offensive line got better and better throughout the course of last season, and I think it has a chance to continue that growth this upcoming year. Devontae Adams is still, in my opinion, the best wide receiver in the league. Maybe Justin Jefferson fully takes over that this year, or maybe Jamar Chase does for that matter, or Tyreek Hill even. But to me, I still think Devontae Adams is the best wide receiver in the league, so got to give him the props there. Moreau's a solid backup tight end. Jacoby Myers is a really solid wide receiver too. Hunter Renfro's still around. If he does, that's a really awesome slot wide receiver. Yeah, there's a lot of pieces you have to respect, and especially if the offensive line does pick up where they left off last year. I think above average, bottom end, above average feels about right. If not there, put them just ahead of the Steelers in the very mid category. All right, Baltimore Ravens. I'm going to put them between the Vikings and the Cowboys. You could send an argument that they should be above Minnesota. And if OBJ is the OBJ I saw that was almost on pace to win Super Bowl MVP when he was with the Rams, last game I saw him play, then yeah, sure, they're probably ahead of Minnesota. But with OBJ, Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, I know two of those 3 guys come with some injury questions, but it feels like at least 2 of those 3 guys should be on the field at any given game, and 2 of those 3 guys would be by far the best wide receiver situation Lamar Jackson's had around him. Even if it's Bateman and Flowers, that's the most help I feel like he's had. That's 2 former first-round wide receivers, and when was the last time we could say that about Lamar Jackson? Plus Mark Andrews, plus a good run game, Plus, the offensive line's still really solid. And Todd Monken. I think that's a big change, too. I think this offense is a new ceiling now, right? We saw during the Greg Roman era what the ceiling for Baltimore was. It was Lamar Jackson winning a unanimous MVP in 2019. That was the ceiling. That was the year if they were going to win a Super Bowl with Greg Roman as the OC. They missed the target. They didn't win the Lombardi that year. So you got to change it up, and I respect them having that type of process. We saw it start last year on the defensive side, moving on from Wink Martindale. Not an easy decision to make, but Mike McDonald now in that spot. Now they've done the same thing here with Monken replacing Greg Roman. Not an easy decision to make because you can be comfortable with being good, but you need to strive for great. I think Monken gives you at least a reset and a chance to hit a higher ceiling. So really excited to see the Ravens this year, especially with Monken and then all those new wide receivers coming into town. Then the Jets, I'm going to go ahead and do it. I'm going to put them in the last team as the potentially best offense in the league. Look, it's Aaron Rodgers, and it's a couple of his guys coming over like an Allen Lazard. It's a really great running back room. Honestly, I'll say great because especially for that scheme, I think Breece Hall, Izzy Abanikanda, Michael Carter. I think all those guys are fantastic fits for that blocking scheme. The offensive line still needs to be fixed out, kind of shuffled around, but I don't think they're in a bad spot. I don't know if it's any glaring weakness, especially if Mekhi Becton stays healthy. Now, if he gets hurt, then things could get a little bit murky. But adding Joe Tippmann, someone who could play some guard for you in a pinch, and then Elijah Vera Tucker can be a tackle who looked pretty good at tackle last year. I feel like you got some flexibility there, and that kind of eases my concerns a little bit. And you got the biggest upgrade you possibly could at quarterback this offseason with Aaron Rodgers. I said this throughout the offseason before we knew who the Jets quarterback was going to be. You sign Jimmy Garoppolo, you can make the playoffs. You sign Derek Carr, you can maybe win a playoff game. You sign Aaron Rodgers, you give yourself a chance to win a Super Bowl. So I got to stick by my word there. Jets, potentially one of the best offenses in the NFL. But that is going to do it for my tier ranking of the offense across the NFL. Tell me where I was right. Tell me where I was wrong. Who's too high? Who's too low? And of course, who's your favorite team? And what tier do you think they belong in and why? I'd love to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. My rankings are just my rankings. Now let me see yours. But that is going to do it for me. Come back later this week when I give you the defensive rankings for the NFL. But until then, my name is Teej, and I am signing off.